This is a book here that I put on the screen called Going It Alone. It was written by George Willing. He was the one who climbed the World Trade Center back in 1977. And the reason I bring that book up is I read it, and the parts that I found most interesting was that he worked for Ideal Toys in 1977. And he talked about his time at Ideal, developing toys for kids. And it was a real top secret room that he worked in. They were very paranoid at Ideal that competitors would steal their ideas. And so he was assigned to the basement. And when I read about it, it didn't sound like very nice working conditions. And I was wondering how typical that is with other manufacturers such as Milton Bradley or Parker.
You mentioned at the beginning of the show that I'm in Germany now, where I'm inventing games, still working in the industry. When you go to some of these fairs and you want to play test your ideas, you sit down at a table in the open, and some other inventor comes down and says, "Oh, what have you got here?" and plays with you. It's a completely open world here, compared to the US, where everything is, like Ideal, top secret. No word to anybody. It's almost paranoia. And we were in the basement too. I mean, it's a nice facility, but the point is, here we are working on drawing and designing and no computer stuff, all hands-on stuff. And the windows are way up at the top because we're in the basement, and there's just these slat windows that let in very little natural light. Whereas the computer people, the ones who do all the design work on computer and so forth, they were moved upstairs with the heavy equipment. And because of the reflection on the screen, it was all windows upstairs. They had to blacken all the windows so that they had no reflection on their screen. So I thought that was kind of a bit odd.
Yeah.
But other than that, the the working condition was not like a sweatshop. It was a 9 to 5.
Okay.
It was good.
Okay.
People work well together because you have so many people involved in a product, which, by the way, is one of the reasons the American companies like Bradley, or I should say, one of the excuses they gave, not rather than one of the reasons, for not putting an inventor's name on the game. So the games I have from Milton Bradley, nowhere is my name listed anywhere.
Sure.
In the files it is, and I have the prototypes, so you know it's mine. But Bradley would say, well, there are a lot of people involved. You have the rules writers, you have the artists, the graphic designers, the marketing department, and so many people are involved. It's no one person's game. Of course, that's changing now, and certainly changed in Europe some time ago. I don't know how far it's gotten in the U.S. at this point.
Okay. Let's see, you were involved in a number of games besides the two mentioned. You were involved in Centipede, which was based upon an electronic video game at the time. So...
This is like show and tell.
All right. Nice to see you have it.
Yeah. So I have this. Yeah, this was a game that one of the first games, I think, that was based on a video game. They wanted to make they got the license and wanted to make a board game of it. And I went to an arcade. I had never played Centipede. I knew something about it. And I went to an arcade and started playing the game.
Okay.
And I heard, or I realized there are, who knows, 9 levels of something. I couldn't make it above level 2.
Right.
So I had to hire a kid who was there. Of course, in these times, I wouldn't even approach anybody. But at the time, it was perfectly okay. And I said, look, if you tell me what you're doing in your game, I will keep paying for the game. Good deal. So he's playing around with the buttons, and he's explaining what he's doing and what has to happen and how things move and everything. And I'm taking notes and throwing quarters in the machine. And that was my instruction to doing Centipede. I went back to Milton Bradley and put it all together from there.
Well, that's interesting. I guess that was the quickest way to learn.
Yeah.
Because if you had to keep playing Centipede until you got good at it, you may have been there a while.
Yes, and of course you don't know, does something change in the board itself, in the game itself, after a certain level? In Centipede, I don't think it does. I think it just, you get less time to do what you have to do, and something moves differently. But basically, the structure remains the same. But you have to get to these different levels in order to be sure that the game you're presenting in a board form still has some good connection to the original.
Sure. Okay.
There's another game that fits in with all that. With the marketing that we talked about.
Oh, yes. Championship baseball.
Yeah.
That's cool. You actually have trading cards of the players included in the game.
So this was a game where I didn't have to go and watch baseball games
Right.
because I knew baseball. And I came up with an idea of how to make the game work using the actual statistics of all the players.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason those statistics were available was because Milton Bradley was working out an arrangement with the players and with the teams to basically license this championship baseball game, which has actual cards of all the players signed by the players and so forth. So this was one of the times when I didn't have to play in advance, but I had to go with our marketing department to the Baseball Players Association to sit in on the conference with them to explain what we were doing in terms of the game as the designer, and for them to talk about how they're going to handle the licensing. And what wound up happening was the team, whoever's in charge of the teams, which is not the Baseball Players Association, I think it's the Baseball Team Association. I get it confused. Okay. Whoever makes those decisions said, fine, but we want 25,000 copies of the game for each city in which there's a Major League Baseball team.
Okay.
And Milton Bradley said, we can't do that because there are some cities where we can't sell that many games to pay for what you're saying. We can't sell 25,000. So the deal broke down.
Okay.
And what wound up happening is you have these player cards in the game, as I said, with the photos of the players and the signature of the players and the actual stats, which were used to make the game. But all signs on the shirts, the sleeves, the hats for the teams were erased.
Oh, geez.
And I thought, oh, maybe I'm making a really highly collectible game. It turns out for collectors that just drop the value way down.
Oh.
They want not just the character, they want the character with the logo, the team shirt, the hat, the whole bit. So that's the story behind a failed marketing attempt. And that game that game did okay, but didn't last as long as it could have, because it just didn't make the last step.
Yeah. Well, I remember looking at the game, and it was kind of interesting. It was a 3D game. It wasn't just a flat game. It actually had a 3D look to it, which I thought was kind of cool. But I never did try it out.
I thought the end result looked great, and I have to tell you that this is exactly what the designer does, and I'm just the game inventor. So I had nothing to do with the look of this game because it was 3D. It had to be designed with a stand-up scoreboard, and you could rotate windows to show the outs and the score and everything else. And I had nothing to do with that. All I did was work on the stats and the cards to develop the game and the gameplay. And then all of that was turned over to someone in the computer department upstairs, working in the very light room where all the windows were blacked out, to develop a program so that we could put in any set of stats and it would come out with something that would fit for play in the game. And then my job was to go over them and throw out any anomalies and say, no, this one doesn't work, too much of this, too much of that. But it was based on, the game is based on the number of singles, doubles, triples, home runs that a particular player would make according to his own stats. The only thing that doesn't have any effect in the game, because I couldn't figure out a way to put it in and keep the game simple, was the pitcher. The pitcher is just a figurehead in the game. And of course, in baseball, pitcher is a lot more than that.
Right.
Pitcher is worth 1,000 words.
Okay. You're also involved with a Snoopy card game too, correct?
Yes, and I just realized I don't have him with me, but that was fun. Just putting together a simple card game with a cartoon character that I did read at the time, that I did love.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know what I can say about that, because it was just an assignment and something I did quickly with cards. Oh, I can say something else about the Fraggle Rock game that I just thought of. When the Fraggle Rock was assigned, they also assigned a price point. They said, this is going to fit in our dollar category, which means we can't have cards and something else. I can't remember exactly what, because they couldn't afford to keep it at the low price level for sales, and have extra implements put in the box. And I came up with the idea at the time. I said, well, instead of printing extra material that needs to go in the box, you know how you have in these older game boxes, you have an insert that's basically just something that the board sits on and fills the box more or less, because otherwise you'd have a box that's only that tall. Okay. I said, what if you printed everything on the insert, and then the purchaser can cut the pieces or bend the pieces out of the insert? You would be destroying the insert, but after you play the game, you just throw it back in the box and put the lid on it. You don't need the insert for the game to be nicely displayed. And so they did that, and it was the first time a dollar game had twice as many elements in it as normal. So that was kind of an interesting extra task to work around or to work with.
Well, I'm surprised that you were involved in so many games over a 3-year period. You were there from 82 to about 84, right?
84, right.
And then
I guess I was working faster than I thought.
I guess so. But unfortunately, even with your hard work, you couldn't save Milton Bradley, as they ended up getting bought out by Hasbro around that time.
Right. That was a big surprise. Actually, when I was laid off, we didn't know it was because the company had been sold. I mean, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that was one of the stipulations, that certain people had to be, or a certain number of people had to be let go. And I was not the last hired, but the next to last. And the last guy hired was moved out from California across the country with a family of 4. And I was footloose and fancy free and single. And they thought, you know, I would do better as the one to go. And I asked, at one time, I asked my boss's boss, one of the higher ups, I said, why is this happening? He said, well, we're required for financial reasons to let somebody go. And he said, and I said, yeah, but why me? And he looked me in the eye and he said, who would you suggest? And he got me there. There was nobody else that I would suggest who would be better to lay off. So I went quietly, and then I found out that Hasbro, or at that time, I found out Hasbro had bought Bradley, which is why they made these changes. And within a couple of weeks, I got hired by Hasbro to do, as a consultant, to do a particular job on a game. So there were no hard feelings there at all. It went well, but it was a shame to see a company with so much history just sort of disappear.
Yeah. Yeah, that is sad. I often wondered if being a game designer has, I guess, how safe you feel in your job. Do you have job security, or is there a lot of turnover in that career path? Do you have any feel about that? If you're an internal game developer, can you expect to go to work for a company for 20 years or more? Or is it, what have you done for me lately? And if it's not much, you're out the door. I just wondered.
I don't know, really. In Europe, the people that I'm presenting my games to at companies, hoping to sell something to them,
right?
They're all changing companies and changing faces all the time.
Okay.
So only certain companies do I see the same people every year, and other companies, oh yeah, she was working here, but now she's working there. So there's a certain amount of changeover within the industry. In the U.S., I think it's a pretty secure position. I don't think it's the kind of thing where they say, well, your last 2 games haven't sold 100,000, so we're going to find somebody else. I mean, it doesn't seem to work that way. People leave on their own accord because they're looking for something else, something better, or whatever. So yeah, it is a good industry to get into in that sense.
Okay. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the AGPI website located at gamesandpuzzles.org. On this site, you'll find over 30 years of publications in flipbook format. In addition, be sure to subscribe to the AGPI YouTube channel and click on the bell to receive automatic notifications of the upcoming videos. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.